Right, welcome ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic Four will be released shortly. And obviously with this, I think Marvel has a lot riding on. Mainly because the last few films in the MCU, Marvel, whatever you want to call it, and the TV shows, etc., have gone down like a ton of bricks. The veneer from Marvel, the shine, the sheen, seems to have definitely dropped. So Marvel really does have a lot riding on this. Now, this is an interview with the director, Matt Shakman. And so I wanted to cover this mainly because of this as a headline, corporate pressures not being my burden to shoulder, when he's talking about the casting. And yeah, I couldn't really think of anything more disingenuous when you know that Pedro Pascal was cast. So yeah, let's take a look. Hit subscribe if you're new here. And I do think as well, personally, that Pedro Pascal will either be box office gold for this movie or box office cancer for this movie. Mainly because his own veneer has started to fall. He has fell foul of oversubscription. He's in too much. Hollywood is pushing him too much. They're slating him as the most masculine men of masculinity with testosterone you've ever seen in your life, when he's an effeminate loser. So, yeah. Could either be great for this film or terrible. But anyway, let's take a look. Right, so this is an interview on Variety. Like I said, you know, I just think this is so disingenuous. So, Fantastic Four assemble. Director Matt Shakman on casting Marvel's first family without auditions and corporate pressures not being my burden to shoulder. Without auditions? What? What? Matt Shakman owes his career to a Superman costume before Marvel Studios hired him to direct the Fantastic Four First Steps, one of the most consequential movies in the company's history, which is true. Before he helmed more than 130 episodes of television, from Everwood and Ugly Betty to Game of Thrones and WandaVision, and was a child actor on sitcoms like Different Strokes and Night Court, Shakman wore only superhero attire. Every day as a little kid in Ventura, California, he would dress up as comic book icons like Batman, Captain America. In suits he often helped craft himself, with the utter conviction that the clothes transformed him into whatever hero he happened to be emulating. This is all nonsense. No one cares. They're just trying to make you like this guy for whatever reason. I don't know, but I don't care. So we'll scroll through some of this, right? When a TV news producer told Shakman's father that his 4-year-old son, clad that day in the Man of Steel's blue and red regalia, would be a natural actor, his parents put him on a Saturday morning drama class. That led to an agent, which led to commercials, then a guest spot, and then basically the rest is history. I don't know why they're doing such a focus on this chap. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. But they're really trying to push this director. Trying to like endear him to everyone. So yeah, whatever. Given that Shakman says this while surrounded by Fantastic Four memorabilia, including a rare copy of the Fantastic Four #1, the November 1961 inaugural issue of the comic written by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, it's obvious that the filmmaker counts himself among Marvel's devoted fans. No one cares, mate. And as he put it bluntly puts it, there would be no Marvel Studios, there would be no Marvel Comics without the Fantastic Four. Sure. I mean, that is true, but no one cares. Shut up. So in a quirk of irony, the Fantastic Four is arriving in theatres at a comparably precarious moment for Marvel. After more than a decade of box office supremacy, the once mighty Marvel Cinematic Universe, along with much of the superhero genre as a whole, has strained to connect with global audiences at the heights it reached just 3 years ago. The 3 previous attempts to bring Marvel's first family to the big screen, just the awful movies, basically, they didn't do very well. They pretty much, they bombed for all intents and purposes. So as we scroll through here and we start to get it, a bit more of the sort of disingenuous cope, as it were. Shakman understands all of it: the cultural legacy, the commercial headaches, the creative hurdles. There's a lot of pressures in wanting to do right by the characters, wanting to do right by Kirby and Lee, wanting to do right by all the amazing comic writers who have been a part of developing this over the last 60 years. Sure, corporate pressures aren't my burdens to shoulder, he says. Instead, his greatest challenge is making a movie that feels personal amid the superhero pomp and circumstance. And that meant drawing on his distinctive path through the industry to drill down on what it means to be a family, with a story that focuses on Reed and Sue having a first child together. They are parents first, they are scientists and explorers second, and they're superheroes only when they have to be. I come at this as a dad and as a husband. That's what makes it so special to me. No one cares. No one cares. This is lame. So in the spring of 2022, Marvel Studios found itself without a director for the Fantastic Four after Spider-Man filmmaker John Watts walked away from the gig, citing his exhaustion with superhero cinema. And at the time, Shackman was on board to direct an adaptation of another beloved franchise that began in the 60s, the fourth Star Trek movie, with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. That project was far enough along, Shackman says, that we had stages, we had crew, we were moving ahead. Was that the movie that they announced and the cast didn't even know that they were supposed to be in it? Yeah, I think it was. But we'd loved his experience. What? But he'd loved his experience directing all 9 episodes of WandaVision, so he started going into Marvel Studios to talk with producer Grant Curtis, Marvel Studios co-president Luis Despacito, and Chief Kevin Feige about what he might want to do with the movie. In one of those meetings, a simple gesture convinced Curtis that Shackman was right for the job. He showed a picture of himself holding his daughter right after she was born. How is this anything? Whatever. This is so lame to do with the Fantastic Four. Like, they're really trying to over-egg this on. This is super lame. So Shackman's central pitch for the Fantastic Four was to start with Reed and Sue becoming parents when they're established superheroes and well into their marriage, and how that decision ripples into Johnny's and Ben's lives. The idea was in part rooted in an aversion to retelling the quartet's origin story, which had been depicted in previous films. More crucially for the 49-year-old filmmaker, he intimately understands how it feels to start a family later in life. I was 40 when I had my daughter, and she definitely took a little bit of assistance from science. What? Why is that something you're saying in this interview? I think anyone who's tackling something of a large scale has to find something deeply personal in it to connect to. Are you trying to tell us you like IVF or something? Why are you telling us this? What weird promotion for a movie this is. With a budget north of 200 million, so it's more than 200 million, the movie is, by several orders of magnitude, the largest undertaking of Shackman's career. Sure. Anyway, we'll scroll through this a little bit more, because I think we need to get to the casting points, which I just think is ridiculous. We've got to some of this lame crap anyway, but like I said, I want to get to the casting point, because that's the stuff which I think is interesting. So, as we go here. The first time Moss Bachrach talked with Shackman about playing Ben, it was over Zoom in late 2023. I had a really nice connection with Matt and then forgot about the whole thing. Then a few months later, I was walking down 5th Avenue and I got a call from my agents. I was honestly quite surprised. Quinn had a similar experience. We spoke about the characters, about his ideas for the aesthetic of the film and the themes of family and sacrifice. And then heard nothing. I say heard nothing like I had any expectation. And then had a flabbergasting call from my rep saying that he wanted me to do it. That was the only conversation they had before the offer. So you can see, literally, they didn't... They got offered the role, apparently. I don't know whether this is to dispel the aspersions that, like, other people were cast and not cast and things like that. I don't know. It's quite odd. So they didn't do any auditions, no? That's pretty shit. That's weird. You didn't do any... like, sort of chemistry test. No, that's weird. But alright then. Sure. Kirby and Pascal met with Shackman and Marvel executives a few times before their casting was finalised, but none of the actors did so much as camera tests together, let alone meet each other. Huh. I mean, that's bad. I've never done that in casting plays either, Shackman says. I believe in finding the people who I have an instinct are right for the part. Right. As Shackman details his casting decisions, he talks about the characters like they're friends that he's known for decades, which in a way he has. Moss Bacharach, he says, is the softest, loveliest human, but with that slightly gruff exterior. A New Yorker through and through. He is Ben Grimm. Shackman had been impressed with Quinn while working with him on Game of Thrones and thought the actor who just exploded into prominence on Stranger Things would grasp how much Johnny never really knew who he was before he was the Human Torch and is now like, who am I? What am I looking for? He was so knowledgeable about the journey that these characters have all been on as individuals. It was really beautiful to talk with him about Sue's journey, what her metaphors were, what her invisibility really means. He cared so much about her. Reed was the most challenging role to cast. Was it? Is that why you cast, like, Hollywood's bitch at the moment? Hollywood's prostitute, basically. Pedro Pascal. The guy that will do anything for anything. He goes from being the nerdy scientist who's locked away in the lab to the husband and the father who would do anything to protect his family to the guy who's leading the Avengers. I realised that the version we were building had to have all those elements. Shackman's known Pascal since they were starting out in theatre in their 20s and felt The Last of Us star could thread that needle. We had the same talent manager at the beginning of our careers. We even almost became roommates. Matt has always been a theatre animal and would include me in various things he was assembling in the theatre community in Los Angeles. Coming together for Fantastic Four felt absolutely fated in the stars. So it was nepotism then. This is terrible. Even if the individual casting makes sense, how could Shackman know that they would come together as a believable family? Great actors create great chemistry, the director says. You bring people together and you build a process that supports the building of that chemistry. This is actually a terrible interview. And this makes it look awful. I don't have anything else to say, really. I could like dissect more and more and more and more and more, but this is just super lame. And I think this is genuinely atrocious. So, there you go. The Fantastic Four. The Sloppening. Anyway, bye now.